morning, everybody. Hello. How's everybody doing today? Alright. So, sounds a little tired. I see thumbs up from Cindy. She's like, I get a break. I just want to welcome you to Exodus. Thank you guys for coming. I hope that we have a good time of worship. Thank you, Kevin and Dave, for leading us this morning. As you guys know, we are going on a missions trip, and we are leaving this Saturday. So actually, for those of us that are going on the trip, this is going to be our last Sunday at church for a few weeks. And I know it's really crazy. I'm really shocked that June has come so fast, and that the 16th is on Saturday. But I'm looking forward to being on the plane, because anything that I forget, I don't have to worry about it, because it's not like I'm coming back to get it anyways, right? So then we'll just deal with it. So until then, I'm now like anxious, like don't forget anything. But until I'm looking forward to Saturday. I did want to spend some time in prayer for the people that were going on the trip. So actually, if you are here, we don't have our whole team here, but if you are going to China with us, can you just raise your hand real quick? So just look around, okay? If you see them around. We got two over there. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a time of prayer. If you feel comfortable, you're next to somebody that's going on the trip, go ahead and put a hand on them, pray for them, or let's just pray together as we do that. Okay, so just join with me in prayer. Father God, Lord, we thank you for just all of these individuals that are just going and offering themselves to be used by you as we go on this trip, Lord, for these next 2 weeks. God, we know that we can't accomplish anything without your presence in our lives, without you working through us, and all of our preparations and all of our work, Lord, that is meaningless without you. So God, I pray, Lord, just even in this time as we come before you and lift up our brothers and sisters that are going to China on this missions trip, Lord, that you would impart your power, your wisdom, your knowledge, and your peace among them. And God, that I know you have a specific desire to challenge them, to let them experience you and see you in a different way. And so, God, I pray, Lord, that their hearts would be attentive to that. God, and that through this time that we serve you, Lord, that we would find the joy of what it means to be a part of your kingdom and your kingdom's work. Lord, we, as a family here, we lift up these brothers and sisters, Lord. And we lift them up in your name. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. All right, thank you guys. I'm going to point to you when we need to go, okay? Who here has seen The Hunger Games? Anybody? Everybody? Most people? Okay, who here has seen The Avengers? Most of you guys? Okay, some of you guys have not seen the movie. Who here has seen Snow White? Anybody seen Snow White? No? No, the new Snow White movie? No? How about like the Harry Potter movies? Who here has seen the Harry Potter movies? Okay, good, right? There are a couple movies that are coming out later on this year that I'm kind of excited to see. They have Batman is coming out later this year, right? Spider-Man, they're going to redo it. It looks cool, even though I'm tired of them redoing Spider-Man. I'll still watch it, right? And I am going to spoil all of these movies for you. Okay, I'm going to spoil them all. I'm going to spoil actually most of the movies that you'll ever watch in your life. About 80% of them for you right now. Okay, I'm going to tell you the ending. The good guys win. The good guys win. Okay? About 80% of all the movies that you watch, right? Like, you know the ending already, right? If you go into the Hunger Games, you know who's going to win, right? You know who's going to win. If you watch Spider-Man, you know he's going to win at the end, right? You watch Batman, well, maybe he'll win, right? You know at least the bad guy will lose, right? You watch these movies, all the Harry Potter series, right? Like, you know. You already know at the beginning of the book, there's this guy named Harry. At the end, he is going to win. Right? Most of the movies that we watch, we already know the ending. So why do we watch them? Because we want to see how they get there. Right? We want to see how this person is going to win. How this group of people, right, are going to win. You know, right? Like the Avengers, you know they're going to win. At some point, they're all going to come together and just destroy everybody, right? Like Thor, any superhero movie that you've ever watched, you know he's going to win, right? Every Die Hard movie, every Men in Black movie, every whatever, you know they're going to win. But what's important is how, right? How it happens. Because in the story of how the winning happens, right, we identify with characters, right? We identify with people and we can relate to the story, right, as we see how things unfold for these people to win. And the theme of Daniel, and actually the theme of the Bible, you know, a huge theme of the Bible, is simply this: God wins. Right? God wins. You know, and it's easy to get sidetracked a lot of times as we're reading through stories, as we're looking at the narratives, as we see what is happening, right? But the main, you know, not the main, but like the end point, you know, as we if you read the Bible straight through and close in Revelation, is this: God wins. Right? God is going to win. And we, you know, as we're diving into Daniel today, you know the ending, right? We know that God is going to win. It is a story about God. But the question is, how? How does that happen? And how does the way that God wins relate to us? What does that mean for us? What does that, you know, say about our lives? And so what we're going to do today is we're just going to dive through Daniel 3. And you know, we're just going to go through it. I'm going to go through each of the, you know, the whole story with us. And we're going to take a look at how God wins. And we're going to take a look at not just how God wins, but what that means for us, right? What that means for the people that the book was written to, and then what it means for us. So if you have your Bibles, go ahead and open up to Daniel chapter 3. It's closer to the 3/4 mark of the Old Testament. So go to Old Testament 3/4. You can also follow along up top. I'll explain what's going on, okay? So King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold, 60 cubits high. That's about 90 feet, okay? 9 stories of a building and 6 cubits wide. So that's about 9 feet in diameter or width, right? And set it upon a plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. He then summoned the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officials to come to the dedication of the image he had set up. So the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officials assembled for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood before it. Pause. So basically, King Nebuchadnezzar, right, he's super rich, right? He makes this 90-foot, 9-foot wide, 90-foot tall image. We don't know what the image is. I imagine, you know, it's probably, I wouldn't be surprised if it was like himself, right? Or he made some kind of image for everybody to come before, and he made it out of pure gold. And to understand kind of the some of the meaning behind this and what this says about King Nebuchadnezzar, we need to actually remember a little bit of what happened in Daniel chapter 2. If you recall in Daniel chapter 2, King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, right? And in that dream, he saw a statue, an image, right? And part of it was made out of gold, part of it was made out of silver, part of it was made out of clay or iron, and part of it was made out of clay. Right? And Daniel interpreted the dream for him. He's like, you are the gold part, right? But your kingdom is not going to last forever. Another kingdom that's not as strong is going to come up, right? And that's the iron part, right? Or the silver part. And then the iron part will come, you know, and then the clay part will come, right? And you could surmise or you could guess, right, with King Nebuchadnezzar, I would imagine maybe even this image of gold that he made is what he dreamt about. And he's bringing, and you can't really tell this like from this part of the passage, but you'll see it unfold as we go on, right? But you could even guess that this is kind of like a defiant moment for King Nebuchadnezzar. He makes the image out of pure gold, right, which represents him and his kingdom. Basically saying, my kingdom is going to last forever. I am going to make this image out of pure gold, because that's me, right? And I am going to gather everybody around, and they are going to worship this. That dream that I had, that prophecy that Daniel gave me earlier about my kingdom fading away, I ain't gonna stand for that. Right? I'm not gonna do that. I am going to put myself above that prophecy, above God. And you're gonna see throughout the story that King Nebuchadnezzar just constantly places himself, elevates himself to a place where he's saying, I am above God. And this is the first part of it, right? He makes this image of gold. In youth terms today, I would say that this is kind of his YOLO moment, right? Do you guys know what YOLO means? Jenny, what does YOLO mean? You only live once. Okay, so YOLO is I don't even get this. I only learned about this past week or so, right? And they're doing a slang workshop in this. So YOLO means you only live once. It's part of a song by Drake called The Motto, right? And basically, people started saying YOLO, but it's kind of an excuse to do something crazy. Actually, to do something pretty stupid, right? So people will be like, yo, and on Twitter, they'll be like, yo, I stood on top of a car while I was driving 50 miles per hour, hashtag YOLO, right? Or it's like, I walked up to a cop and I slapped him in the face, hashtag YOLO, right? You only live once, It's like, I ate 5 peppers, and I don't know, the hottest peppers in the world, right? YOLO, you just do stupid things, right? It's like, you only live once, right? You only live once. And this is what Nebuchadnezzar is doing. He's like, you know what? Forget God, forget all of these rules, forget the prophecy that he said. He's like, I'm going to make myself a statue, and I'm going to have everybody else worship it. YOLO, right? And that's his moment. That's what he's doing. He's like, forget it. Forget it. You only live once. I'm gonna do something for myself. So he brings all the people. We'll go on. Right? Then the herald loudly proclaimed, nations and peoples of every language, this is what you are commanded to do. As soon as you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. Therefore, as soon as all of these people heard the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, and all kinds of music, all the nations and peoples of every language fell down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Can you see what he's doing? He has made an image that he expects the world to worship. Right? More important than all the individual gods that all of these nations have, right? All of these people have, all of these tribes have. He's like, no, I am setting myself up above all of that. My image, that's what you worship. Whenever you hear music, worship it, right? Whenever you hear, all of these instruments playing, fall down and worship this. We'll continue. At the same time, some astrologers or the Chaldeans, maybe in your translation, came forward and denounced the Jews. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, may the king live forever. Your majesty has issued a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music must fall down and worship the image of gold. They're using his words, right? These are Nebuchadnezzar's words. And that whoever does not fall down and worship will be thrown into a blazing furnace, right? Using his words. But there are some Jews that you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Daniel's friends, who pay no attention to you, your majesty. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up. Furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. If you want to know what's important to somebody, you look at what makes them angry. right? The things that will make you the most angry are probably the things that are like really, important for you. If someone does something against like one of your things and that just like really, pisses you off, right? That's probably because it's really important to you. And this makes Nebuchadnezzar furious with rage. What? These people aren't worshiping my image that I made? This is important. So these men were brought before the king, and Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up? Now, when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, and pipe, and all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good," giving them a chance. "But if you do not worship it, you'll be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace." And listen to this last sentence. "Then what God will be able to save you from my hand?" What God will be able to save you from my hand? Can you see it? Can you see how King Nebuchadnezzar, he is setting himself up, right, to be above every God, every, worship thing, right, in the world. He sees himself as over all. And you know that Daniel is a story about God, so this is like the bad guy coming up, right? And like in this corner, versus God, we have King Nebuchadnezzar, right? 60, with the 90 foot high, statue of gold. And the other corner we have the God of Israel. We already know the ending, right? We know the ending, what's going to happen. But he's setting himself up. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, "King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up." These are the only words in the whole chapter that we hear Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego speak. Right? And you can tell as they are, God's instruments, that these words are important. Right? These words are important. What they say is important. How they produce their faith is important. And it is simply this. If we're thrown in there, God can save us from that. But even if he doesn't, I still won't worship your God. I still won't worship your image. I still won't serve your gods. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, their first priority is that they simply live righteously. It's not about the result that, definitely God will save me, and that's where my faith is being put in. My faith is not, their faith isn't being put in necessarily that God is going to rescue them necessarily. Right? But simply that they have a desire to worship God, that no matter what the result, we will not worship your image. We will not serve your God. Then Nebuchadnezzar was furious, right? He gets more mad. He's getting livid right now, right? With Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude toward them changed. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual and commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So these men, wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes, were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. The king's command was so urgent, and the furnace was so hot that the flames of the fire killed the soldiers who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and these 3 men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace. I can imagine the scene he's just mad, right? And he's screaming, he's like, "Throw them in," right? And as the soldiers are taking them towards the furnace, right, he's like, "Make it hotter," right? I'm so mad at these guys, right? I don't want a part of them to be, I want them to be completely ash, want them to be wiped out because they will not worship me. Right? They will not worship my image. They will not bow to my demands. And the fire is so hot that it kills even the soldiers that carry them there. And they fall in. So then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, "Weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire?" They replied, "Certainly, your majesty." He said, "Look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods." Nebuchadnezzar then approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." Changes his perception really quick, doesn't he? And so Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire, and the satraps, prefects, governors, and royal advisors, all the people that were meant to worship the other image, right? King Nebuchadnezzar's image, crowded around them. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair on their heads singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. God had completely protected not just, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but it's a picture of a complete protection, right? That's why he goes into such detail about their clothes, about their smell, right? The servants of God completely protected, unharmed. The servants of Nebuchadnezzar died by the flames. And as the story goes on, you see this contrast, right? Like King Nebuchadnezzar, he's like, "I am above God," right? And yet we start to see the differences. He seems to have all the power in the beginning. Right? But God is like, "Nope. I will protect my people in a way that you can't." Then Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore I decree that the people of any language or of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be cut into pieces and their houses be turned into piles of rubble, for no other God can save this way." Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. It's amazing that within this story, right, we have a king, who has set himself up, right? He has a complex, right? Like he has something, I'm not just king, I am God. I am over everything, and he sets himself up to be like that, right? And there's story of how God kind of wins over that is played out through Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, how they pursue their faith, how they act in the midst of this trial or temptation or difficulty. And in the end, the same guy that said, "And what other God will save you from my hand?" He says, "For no other God can save in this way." I'm not necessarily convinced that Nebuchadnezzar, really thinks that the Jewish God is, super, his God. Maybe it's, more of a healthy respect. He's like, "Good one, God. You got the good one. I respect that," It's like, "Good job. I can understand," right? From one power to another, he's like, "Yeah." Because he seems pretty fickle, earlier on, in the chapters before with Daniel, he bowed down and worshiped God when Daniel prophesied about, his dream, and he's like, "Oh, your God is awesome," right? And then then he makes this image, and then he, goes against the Jewish people again. So I don't really know where Nebuchadnezzar is at. At least he has some kind of healthy respect for God. But the story of chapter 3, right, the story of this part is simply that God wins. Right? He wins through rescuing his servants, through protection of them, and also through glimpses of revelation of God's future plan. Right? And these are things that we are going to see more, right? Like all of Daniel, you're going to see God wins, God wins, God wins, right? First he won when Daniel was like, oh, I'm going to take a step of faith and I'm not going to eat the king's food, right? And God blesses that and he wins, right? The second one is like when everybody's in trouble, of dying, all the wise men are being persecuted and they're going to die because nobody can interpret the dream, right? Like God wins, right? And Daniel in chapter 3, right? Like, Nebuchadnezzar is setting himself up as above God, right? And then God wins. And so the whole story of God winning is in Daniel, but what he does now, and we'll see this more and more, he starts giving us a picture of what's going to happen later. Right? He's like, God wins, God is winning, and there is a plan. There is something that God is going to do. Right? After the dream, of all the kingdoms falling, he's like, there will be a kingdom that will reign forever. Right? And now, even here in the furnace, there is this sight, right? Who is this fourth man? He looks like the son of the gods. During the time when this was written, and to the people that this was written to, things had actually gotten worse. Right? This was written to the Israelites in a time when they were in full captivity. At this time, only like the young men had been captured or taken into Babylon. Right? But years later, they did a series of exiles of Israelites into Babylon or outside of Israel. Right? And this is in that time where people, are reading Daniel. It's to a people that are displaced, even worse than here, right? And so this message, is meant to ring deeply for these guys. It's like God is still going to win. God is going to win, and you need to follow this example, right, that I've set for you in Daniel and in Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, right, where you don't worry about, know that he has the power to save you, but simply live right. Right? Live righteously before your God, and God is winning. God is going to win. You can't see it. I know you can't see it, but God is going to win. There would have been so many ways, I think, if I were, in Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's shoes to justify just bowing before the idol and saving your life. Right? One, hey, I'll do it, but in my heart, I won't mean it. Right? I'll just do it, just to survive, but in my heart, it doesn't mean anything. So then it's okay. Right? Or how about this? How about this justification? But God put me here. He's already put me in a position of power. Obviously he wants me to use this influence for something, right? So obviously I can't die now. So I might as well just worship this, worship his image now, right? So that I can use my position, right? Use my power, use the influence that God has given me, more. Right? There's so many ways to justify, in those moments, like, hey, it's okay. Right? It's okay. And I would hear that, and I'd be like, all right, that's your choice. Sounds all right. Sounds okay. But God isn't asking for us to, or he's not asking for his servants to hey, figure out your best, look beyond the situation, that you're in, right? He's like, in your situation, what is worshiping me? What is living right? No matter what circumstances. You need to trust me, right? I am going to win. I don't know if this happens to you, but sometimes when I'm stressed in life, I go into what I will call an if-only state of mind. Right? And I'll start thinking about life in terms of if-only statements. And if only blank would happen, then everything would be fine. And if only this would happen here, everything would be okay. If only I got, if only I just get through tomorrow's final, right, everything will be okay. I'll survive. I'll be happy, right? If only I get, into this college, life will be fine, right? If only I get this job, if only this gets fixed, if only I find this relationship, if only I do these things or these things happen, right, I will be fine. I will be happy. I will be content. I will be satisfied. And these if-only attitudes fixate us on solving problems, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But the only problem is that one if-only leads to another if-only. And over time, what we'll find in our hearts is that salvation for our lives doesn't come from God, but it comes from solving all of these if-onlys. Right? And in that situation with, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, it's like, well, if only, I just bow this one time. Right? Then everything will be okay. Everybody will be off my back. Right? If only, I compromise here. If only I compromise there. It'll be okay. I'll solve the situation. And I feel like one thing that God's been speaking to me as, I've been sitting with people and hearing, hearing people's problems and issues and the things that are going on in our lives. And I feel like God, is calling me to shift from if only to only you. That salvation comes from God alone. And that our actions, the way that our faith, in how God works and in what He's doing needs to be represented, right? And that salvation is coming from God, not from these, if only I fix this, if only this happens to me. I feel like if we just think about it ourselves, right? If you just, everybody close your eyes. Everybody close your eyes. You can join me. Just think about it, right? Think about what would your if only be. If only blank, everything would be fine. If only blank, I would be happy. If only, this is what, that's what I need. And what does that mean then to switch that now in that situation or in that, issue or in that desire? Right? To now switch that to only you. That only you can satisfy what I need here. Only God can save. Now you can open your eyes. In these situations that we're in these trials that we're in, we have to remember that God is going to win. Right? God is winning. God has a plan for winning. God is revealing it to us. Right? Our call in this time is simply to live, right, in faith of God's power, of God's sovereignty, but yet not relying upon the result, but simply on what's in front of you right now. How can you live righteously before God now? That is how our faith will play out. And that is how our lives will play out. Let's pray. Father God, Lord, we thank you that you are sovereign, Lord. Lord, that in this account of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Lord, we see what faith looks like. We also see what you look like, Lord. You give glimpses of your power, Lord. You show that you are over all things, all situations, all kings, all powers, Lord, all things. And also that you have this future plan. And in that, Lord, we are supposed to respond in our faith in you. God, I pray, Lord, that we would be able to have confidence in you winning in our lives, Lord, in our situations, in our difficulties, in our trials. Lord, that simply as we live for you, in you, God, that we will be a part of that.